Hi friends, we're going to talk about how we're going to compare and contrast informational writing. Okay, so I'm going to use these two articles, and inside the articles, this first one, it talks about U.S. history. Whenever you compare these Scholastic articles, you need to make sure you're matching up the tabs, and this says world history. It turns out I can compare these two because they're talking about two different villages. So that's what I'm going to do. So first what you want to do is you're going to read the article. You're going to underline important information that you think should be talked about in your compare and contrast essay. And then you're going to read the other article, Escape from Pompeii. So, and then also notice that I've highlighted some things that are important. After you read it, then you can start to do it's called a Venn diagram. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is, after we read what happened to this colony, we want to talk about the characters, or the topic, the setting, or the lesson or problem. Okay, lesson or problem. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is talk about the characters. So in this first article, they talk about colonists, about 115 men, women, and children, a guy named John White, and an archaeologist, and how they discovered things. The setting takes place in 1587, and it's on an island called Roanoke Island. It's in the New World, America. Okay, and then the lessons to learn, or the problem that was happening, is that the American Indian tribe was not welcoming, and the colonists were running out of food. The colonists disappeared. People didn't know where they went. But the houses were left behind a little broken. The artifacts that were found suggest that the colonists split up and moved. Okay. All right, and then after we read Escape from Pompeii, we talk about some of the information in the article. We're contrasting. Okay, so the setting, which we talked about over here, this one talks about the colonists, and this one over here talks about the Italian people. Okay, and there's an archaeologist in that one as well. Okay, as I talk, I'm going to ignore the middle part because we're just talking about the two different stories right now. Okay, so then we talk about the setting. This one was 1587, and this one is 2,000 years ago, and it's in Pompeii, Italy. Okay, and then the lessons learned. A volcano erupted and buried the city of Pompeii. The town had homes, shops, fast food, theaters. They wrote notes and paintings. And we will keep learning from the past, is what the article talked about. Okay, so after I do both of these, then I can start comparing. So what did each article talk about that's very similar to the other one? Well, what's similar is that they both talk about the past. They both talk about villages and how they disappear. They both talk about archaeologists, and they archaeologists discover and are learning from the past artifacts. Okay, so once we've done this, then we're going to write our tabletop. Now, before we do our tabletop, I want you to notice something. There's 3 sections in here. There's one here, okay, there's one section here, and then there's this middle section. Well, there's your table legs right there. So this is going to be table leg number 1. This is table leg number 2. And this is table leg number 3. Okay, so we have our table legs right there. So let's go ahead and talk about our main idea sentence first. We're talking about comparing and contrasting, so we need to have those words in the main idea. Comparing and contrasting two historical articles help show the similarities and differences between colonists and Pompeii, Italy. Now we're going to go into our first supporting detail, which is also talking about this first story right here. Okay, so first in the article, what happened to this colony, there were 150 men, women, and children in 1587 who were running out of food, and the American Indian tribes were not friendly. So they split up and moved. Right here. Split up and moved. Okay, so that's your first supporting detail. Now we're going to go into our second supporting detail. And that talks about the other article. So second, in the article Escape from Pompeii, 2,000 years ago, an Italian village was buried, and an Italian village was buried by a volcano, and many artifacts were left behind to tell the story. Okay, so there were things left behind to tell the story. Okay, and then the last supporting detail is this middle part right here. So, last, both articles tell about the past history of the colonial and Italian villages and how archaeologists discovered and learned from the past articles. Okay, so there we have it. Now, our conclusion restates our main idea. In conclusion, there are many similarities and differences when studying the past history of colonial and Italian villages. Okay, so we're not done yet. So we have to take everything that we put in this tabletop into our, write it into a paragraph. Okay, so here we go. Good handwriting, please. History. Comparing and contrasting two historical articles helps show the similarities and differences between colonists and Pompeii, Italy. First, in the article, what happened to this colony? There were 115 men, women, and children in 1587. Colonial America, who were running out of food, and the American Indian tribes were not friendly, so they split up and moved. Second, in the article Escape from Pompeii, 2,000 years ago, the Italian village was buried by a volcano, and many artifacts were left behind to tell their story. Last, both articles talk about the past history of colonial and Italian villages and how archaeologists discovered and are learning from the past artifacts. In conclusion, there are similarities and differences when studying the past history of a colonial village and an Italian village. Okay, now just know I need a photocopy of this, a photocopy of this page and of this page. I need a photocopy of your tabletop, and I need a photocopy of your Venn diagram. Okay, friends, we've been doing this all year long. I know you can do it. Kiss your brain. You've got this. Finish strong.